Dear students, welcome to the lecture series on business environment. Today we shall take up unit 4th and we will discuss in detail about export-import policy. When we talk about export-import policy, the three terms comes into our mind. They are commercial policy, foreign trade policy and export-import policy. These all terms are synonymous. That means whether we call it commercial policy or foreign trade policy or export or import policy, all connotes the same meaning. Now, what do we mean by export-import policy? We shall learn it in detail under this lecture. The objective of this lecture is to understand in detail meaning of export-import policy, objective of EXIM policy. EXIM is the abbreviation being given to the export-import policy, comparison of pre and post 90s EXIM policies, where we need to compare that how import and export position is there in the economy of India. Then we will learn about various export policies of India. And at last we will summarize our discussion on the various export-import policies which are being announced by Government of India from time to time. Now we shall start our discussion on the export-import policies in India. From time to time, the export-import policies in India are being announced by the Government of India. Till now, 7 big policies have been issued. The latest policy in relation to the export-import is being issued is EXIM policy 2009-2014. We shall start up our discussion from the EXIM policy 1985. Then we will discuss the features and objective of EXIM policy 1988-91. Then EXIM policy 1992 to 1997. Afterward, the fourth one is EXIM policy 1997-2002. The fifth one is EXIM policy 2002 to 2007. Then the sixth policy which is being announced is EXIM policy 2004 and 2009, and the latest or the most recent one is EXIM policy 2009 to 2014. From this slide we can see that earlier the EXIM policies were issued for 3 years, but after 1992 to 1997 they have been issued for a 5 years period. They have been made parallel to the 5-year plans in some of the cases, and every year a supplementary amendment is being issued which is being incorporated into the export-import policy of India. Now a question comes to our mind is, what is export-import policy? So its definition is, the foreign trade of India is guided by export-import policy of the Government of India. Hence it contains policies in the spheres of foreign trade, that is with respect to import and export from the country, and more especially export promotion measures, policies and procedures related thereto. Export means selling abroad and import as bringing in India any goods and services. Hence we can say that in order to regulate and enhance the exports, to promote the export measures, policy is being announced by the Government of India which regulates the foreign trade in our economy. So whatever regulations and the guidelines which are being given under export-import policies are beneficial for promoting the exports in India. EXIM policies are regulated by the Foreign Trade Development and Regulation Act 1992. This is the regulatory body under which EXIM policies are being governed. EXIM policy is prepared and announced by central government. EXIM policy of India aims to developing export potential, improving export performance, encouraging foreign trade and creating favorable balance of payment position. When we talk about creating favorable balance of payment position, means that we try to enhance our foreign earnings by enhancing the exports. Where the exports exceeds the import, obviously the balance of payment would be showing a favorable balance, since our balance of trade would be in a favorable position. Now let us understand what are the general objectives of EXIM policy. General objectives of EXIM policy would be applicable to all the EXIM policies which are being issued. They are not peculiar to a specific EXIM policy, but they are the basic guidelines onto which any EXIM policy is being issued by the Government of India. So let us elaborate these general objectives of EXIM policy. The first one is to establish the framework of globalization, where by globalization the entire world has become one market. The EXIM policies try to establish this framework of globalization where exports and imports can be regulated. To promote the productivity, competitiveness of Indian industries, where productivity and competitiveness are being promoted, obviously the quality insurance is being done. It gives a pace to the industrial development. The third one is to encourage the attainment of high and internationally accepted standards of quality. Where we are competing at international level, the output or the productivity would be attained at an acceptable standard of qualities. We have to abide by ISO standards so that we can provide the better quality of products to the consumers. So it also lays emphasis on consumables and the end products which are being manufactured by the Indian corporation, so that our exports can be enhanced. The fourth one is to augment export by facilitating access to raw material, intermediate components, consumables and capital goods from the international market. Where we are consuming raw materials and the miscellaneous goods from the international market, we are putting into better quality of input so that our products can be of much better quality, and whatever we are spending on the foreign exchange would not cost us that high as we are earning from the exports, which are the results of using such inputs. Fifth one is to promote internationally competitive import substitutions and self-reliance. Import competition is too high, where we have to compete with lot many developing nations as well as developed nations. So in order to promote the competitive import substitution here means that instead of other countries, if the developed countries are importing the goods from us, we are in a position to earn more foreign exchange. We are able to generate a better foreign trade and forex. So here the EXIM policies tries to enhance the import substitutions and self-reliance. Self-reliance means that rather than putting more emphasis on the imported products, we try to manufacture or inbuilt such captively used goods which can be used into our production. They are in-house productions or in-house built good quality of the products. So here the EXIM policies would lay emphasis on the better productivity, better production and enhancements of exports and putting less reliance on import. Now students, we will have a comparison of the pre and post 90s EXIM policy. So we will compare here imports and export and see the trade balances. First of all, we will start with 1948-51. In this year, the imports which was in the US billion dollars 650, while exports were 647. So we have the imports exceeding exports and it's showing a negative balance of $3 million. So what are the peculiar features by which we are getting this imports exceeding the export? In such years, excess of import was due to pent-up demand of war, shortage of food and raw material due to partition, import of goods due to starting of hydroelectric and other projects. So this was the year which was quite near to the partition. Obviously, we have undergone the wars and the outcome of such wars. It was the post-war era, post-partition era, hence we have put more reliance on the import. Next year is 1951 to 56. Here also the imports are 730 while exports are lesser in number and it is 622. So, we are facing a trade balance of minus 108. The trade deficit was largely due to programs of industrialization which gathered momentum and pushed up the imports of capital goods. No improvements were seen in export even up to 1956. It was the years where the 5-year plans as well as the industrial policies lays emphasis on the industrialization. Hence, we have put more emphasis on imports so that we can give a pace to the industrialization. Again, under 1956 to 61, imports are on a much heavier side. It is 1080 while exports are as less as 613. So, we are facing the deficit of 467. Let us understand why this trade deficit of 467 was seen under 1956 and 61. It was excess of import due to setting of steel plants, heavy expansions, renovation on railways and modernization of many industries. Export lower than the import occur in second plan, which shows that export promotion drive did not materialize. In 1961-66, imports again were showing on a higher side while exports were lesser. Let us understand excess of import was due to rapid industrialization need, capital goods as raw material. Defense needs had increased due to aggression by China and Pakistan. They were the years of war. Need of food grains due to failure in the crops in 1965 and 66. Now, under 1966 to 69, where we have annual plans rather than the 5-year plans, what was the position? Let us evaluate it. Imports were 5775 while exports were on a much lesser side, it was 3708. So, we are again facing a trade deficit of minus 2067. It was on account of devaluation. Devaluation was resorted to essentially reduce the volume of import to boost export, create favorable balance of trade and balance of payment. In 1969 and 74, imports were 1972, exports were 1810. So, again a trade deficit was there, but in comparison to the previous plans, that is annual plans, it was much lesser because we have overcome the war situations, we have able to create a better economic reforms. Let us understand what has happened during this era and what these figures are reflecting. As a consequence of import restriction policies with the vigorous export promotion measures during 1970-73, the country had favorable balance of trade for first time since independence, but several international factors pushed up the prices of petroleum products, steel, fertilizers, etc., results low magnitude of trade balance. There was a balance that was favorable. Here we have been able to get the balance of trade, but due to the international price rises in relation to the petroleum and other products, the trade balance was not as favorable as it should have been. Let us understand the position in 1974-79. Here the figures are again showing a trade deficit of 810. Significant increase in export during every year of this period. Export of coffee, tea, cotton, fabric, etc. recorded substantial increase in this period. But Janata government followed policy of haphazard import liberalization, results declined trade balance from 1977 to 78. So, the major reason of showing a trade deficit was the policies of liberalization which was announced by the Janata Party during then times. In 1980-85, let us evaluate the condition. Here also the trade deficit is on a much higher side. The imports are as high as 14,986 while the exports are lesser, they are 9051. So, it is showing again a trade deficit of minus 5935. So, decline in POL imports was more than by a big hike in non-POL imports as a consequence of import liberalization. Consequently, huge trade balance, that is negative balance, can be seen over here. In 1985 to 90, again we have recorded the trade balance, that is deficit trade balance. Huge trade balance compelled the government to approach the World Bank and IMF for loan. So, it was a period where India has resorted to the external debts and have taken the help of World Bank and IMF in order to overcome the negative balance of payment and balance of trade. The government was also forced to apply brakes on the licensing policies of import. Here the reforms were made in the industrial licensing and so many items were removed from the negative list also. Now in 1990 to 92, there is a change in the scenario. Let us understand what was the position of balance of trade, how the imports and exports were there under this period. Imports were 45,522 while exports were 38,300. Again there is a trade balance, that is debit, it is minus 7,222. In 1990 to 91, push up was given to export, but as a consequence of Gulf War, government failed to curb imports. In 1991-92, government introduced number of measures in trade policies, allowing EXIM scripts, abolishing cash compensatory supports, which are known as CCS schemes, as also a two-step devaluation of the rupee, but failed to boost up exports. So again, under the Gulf War conditions, the trade balance has not come up to the level. Now let us examine the positions in 1992 to 2001. Here the imports are $1,40,740 billion and the imports are 1,18,252. So the trade deficit of minus 22,488 is being reflected. Let us evaluate the consequences or the reasons of such balance, that is negative balance of the trade. In 1992 to 2001, slowdown in the exports and higher side of import was due to depressed nature of world market, saturation of developed countries market for electronic goods which are dynamic export sectors, increased protectionism by industrialized countries in areas of textile and clothing, increasing competition from China and Taiwan. So, these are the important factors where the world market has shown a saturation in relation to the electronic goods, and being the major export sector, we have faced a problem to increase our exports. And also there was a declining trend in the textile and clothing also due to industrialization. There was a shifting of the industrialization from handlooms to the larger textile industries. Increasing competition was also there from the China and Taiwan. So, in order to combat with the China and Taiwan, we have to do the much exercise to increase the exports, but again they were the tight competitors, hence the exports were not as high as was expected, that resulted in a trade deficit. Let us further evaluate the consequences of the decline in the trade balance in 1992 to 2001. They are: India underestimated the impact of Southeast Asian crisis. Non-tariff barriers have been created by developed countries to slow down Indian exports. So, outsiders, external factors or outside factors have played a major role in the slowdown of the exports. In 2000 and 2001, export was largely due to rupee depreciation along with further trade liberalization, more openness to foreign investment in EOU sectors like IT. Here EOU means export oriented units. So, here the openness to the foreign investment was there, hence we are not able to boost up the exports. So, this was one of the major cause of showing a trade deficit in 1992 to 01. Let us evaluate the situation in 2002 and 2003. Imports were 65,3 $1,422 US million, while exports were 52,512. Again we have seen a deficit. The rise in import in 2002-03 was broadly based on oil imports, food and allied products, edible oils and capital goods. Majorly we have seen a rise in import on account of the oil imports. So again we have seen a trade deficit in the year 2002 and 2003. There are other factors in the year 2003 and 4. Let us evaluate it. It is again showing the negative or the unfavorable balance of payment. Exim policy 2003-4 gave massive thrust to the export by duty-free import facilities for service sector up to earnings 10 lakh foreign exchange and liberalization of duty exempted schemes. Such schemes were introduced so that we can cover up a large amount of the deficit which was ongoing for such years. Here we have tried to lower down the negative balance or the trade deficit by giving the exports a massive thrust, where we have given lot of incentives and benefits to the export oriented units and the duty exemption schemes. Besides all these measures, trade balance in 2003-4 are high due to mainly on imports of POL products more. Currently almost 2/3 of the country's crude oil requirement are imported. Besides import of POL, imports of non-POL items, that is petroleum and other items, shoot up by 17% in 2002-03 to 26.2% in 2003 and 4. So we have evaluated the various circumstances and the conditions in relation to imports and exports and balance of payments since 1948 till 2003 and 4, and have evaluated the various incentives and measures which are being taken up by government from time to time. We have also understood that how external factors and the situations of war affect the balance of payment, and how the Exim policies are tried to reduce the deficits and try to boost up the exports. We are concluding up our lecture of today. Under today's lecture, we have learned in detail about the commercial policies or the foreign trade policy, and we have called it as export-import policy of India under various circumstances and for various years. We have learned in detail the entire comparison of the pre and post 90s Exim policies and their impact on the trade deficits and trade surplus. We have also learned about the objectives of the Exim policy and various measures which can help to enhance the exports and put lesser reliance on the imports. With this, we are ending up our lecture of today. Thank you.